funding resources for combating harmful algal blooms. And this is a nice transition. We talked earlier in the comments a lot about the need to fund these activities, and Mr. Ed Smith, the Director of Water Policy and Ecosystems Restoration for the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, is going to lead this presentation. I'll turn it over to him as soon as I highlight the purpose is to provide a briefing on the recent funding opportunities to support an increased number of green infrastructure projects to be developed and implemented, and the connection to our CCMP. It relates to our water quality improvement priority action objectives 3, to reduce urban stormwater and agricultural runoff pollution, 4, to reduce wastewater pollution, and 5, to reduce harmful algal blooms. So with this, Mr. Smith, I'll turn this over to you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and glad to be here. I hope everybody is enjoying the presentations as much as I am. This has been very enlightening. I love to see these presentations get the engagement, and hopefully what I have to offer today is just as important and enlightening or engaging as the previous presenters. As he said, my name is Ed Smith. I'm the Director for the Office of Water Policy and Ecosystems Restoration at DEP. My office is responsible for the Everglades restoration efforts from the state of Florida, as well as coordinating with all 5 of our water management districts on water supply and water resource issues. And then the third hat I get to wear it's probably my most fun hat, if you will, is our Innovative Technologies Grant Program. Next slide, please. So as Dr. Parsons pointed out, this program was a brainchild of the task force. We were the result of their efforts from the first task force. We had been tasked with evaluating technologies as they come in, and again, we use their guidance as our direction for all of our efforts. You know, we look for that diverse portfolio of technologies. We're looking for those that are cost efficient, environmentally safe, and scalable. We do focus on prevention. I think in early years, we had a hard time with that simply because we didn't get a lot of applications that were prevention related. But we felt we needed to evaluate what we received. But we have turned that tide, and I think we're starting to make some inroads as far as prevention focus is related. And then we have recently started working to get a lot more projects that are, out there to detect or monitor or forecast, when a bloom is coming. So we're working with a lot of different groups and organizations now to evaluate different opportunities for that kind of effort. Next slide, please. So the Innovative Technology Grant Program, again, it was initiated as part of the Governor DeSantis Executive Order 1912. We do work with local government entities. That's a requirement of our grant funding that's provided by the legislature. With that local government entities, we have been able to expand that under Florida Statute 287 to include any of our university system partners. With that, we've been able to expand it to about 7, I believe, of our universities around the state, which have been excellent partners with us. FGCU, to name one, we've got several grants with FGCU that are showing great promise, and we're glad to support Dr. Rosen and his fellows at FGCU and some of the work they're doing. This local government entity can also include all 5 of our water management districts, and we've been successful with 3 of them to date on some projects to evaluate different technologies. South Florida, St. Johns River Water Management District, and the Northwest Florida Water Management District here in Tallahassee. And then just this last cycle, we were able to expand this government entities to include Florida-based nonprofits. And so we've got a couple of projects that are working with those kind of groups, those stakeholder groups, to evaluate different technologies that they have brought to the table as potential solutions for some of our nutrient problems throughout Florida's water bodies. Some of the things we look for, we're focused on those that prevent But all of our projects have to have some connection to either prevention, mitigation, or cleanup of harmful algal blooms. And then we're recently, the last 2 years, we've been focusing on those that have the ability to predict or monitor harmful algal blooms to provide that critical information for us to communicate with our partners in the water management districts, the counties, the Department of Health, and so forth. Next slide, please. So key funding considerations, again, we're looking for technologies that are innovative. And by innovative, what we mean are things that have been demonstrated outside of Florida. So if it has never been used in Florida, we would consider that an innovative. We're also looking for things that perhaps maybe were demonstrated in Florida, but were used for an alternative purpose. So if it's a repurposing of a known technology, we like to get those. Those things are always helpful because a lot of times they've answered some of the ecological or environmental or human health concerns that we may have as we're going through these through our evaluation process. They have to have shown to achieve a proposed benefit without environmental harm. So this is a key one that we look at. And in each of our projects, we do require some sort of preliminary data for us to analyze to make sure that we know at a minimum that they've gone through some kind of bench scale or laboratory analysis and have gone through the appropriate approval mechanisms. For example, if we had a vendor come to us with a proposal that has claiming that they have a algacidal component to their process, we would require that algacidal process to go through both an US EPA approval and registry, as well as the Florida Department of Agricultural and Consumer Services registered for use within the state of Florida. And then finally, they would have to go through the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission permitting program before we would even consider the product being used in state waters. We're also looking for those things that are scalable. Our algal bloom problems vary in size greatly. As Mr. Rosen or Dr. Rosen pointed out, excuse me, Barry, he pointed out Lake Okeechobee in 2018 was almost completely covered with a visible algal bloom. That's huge, 730 square miles. So we're looking for technologies that perhaps not quite that large, but would get to addressing scales to that size. But we're also looking for things that would get to those kind of smaller acute issues, when you see within a marina or some of the back canals that are neighborhood canals that are around South Florida. And then we're looking for projects that have water quality benefits. We're really focused on those that prevent nutrients from getting into the water, or those that can remove nutrients from the water. Prevention is always easier. It's a lot cheaper. So if we can get to those technologies that can do that, those are always wins. And then we want projects that are ready to construct. Our first year of funding, we discovered that a lot of the technologies we have are, they're innovative, they're new. And so a lot of times the vendors may not have all of the resources in place in order to move forward. So we really focus on readiness of projects. Our goal is essentially to have a project, once we execute an agreement with the government entity, that they're able to get the project up and running and completed within 18 months. That's our goal. We've achieved it on a few, but most of them go a little bit longer than that. For example, we're working with a project right now that we were hoping to get in 18 months, but we found out that there's a requirement with University of Florida IFAS that all of their research projects have to run 2 years in order to be registered in the agricultural BMP program. So we've extended that grant to make sure we can get them the time necessary to do the project, get the correct data, and get that project, if it does work out, registered as an agricultural BMP. And then finally, we look for the projects that are located in an area where there's either a basin management action plan or TMDL established, or an area where we know that there's going to be a recurring algal bloom. For example, we know that there's going to be in the St. Johns River, we know that there are several lakes within their water management district boundary that have algal blooms almost annually. So we look for projects that can focus on those areas to kind of highlight the need to address those problematic areas. Next slide, please. Some of the issues that we do run into from time to time is that we'll get a great project, but it's submitted by the vendor directly. Our funding requires us to go through that local government, academic institution, or nonprofit organization. So it challenges us, but we do try to work with those vendors to sync them up with a local government or a academic institution where applicable. But it is an issue that we do run into from time to time. That was particularly problematic in our first year, which resulted in a fewer number of opportunities than we would have liked. Also, funding cannot be provided directly to the vendor, private entity, or for a for-profit entity. So that's another challenge that we have. A lot of the communities that submit the grant applications, it is a challenge because all of our grants are cost reimbursement grants. So that means that community has to put out the funds to pay their vendor first before they can come to DEP to seek reimbursement to cover those costs. It's a challenge for a lot of the smaller communities, but we do work with them, and we've been able to streamline our reimbursement process under this program to where we can usually get that done in about 14 days. So we do as much as we can to minimize any impacts to those local governments. Pictured here is one of our first innovative technology programs. This is in Lake Munson up here in Tallahassee. It's with the Northwest Florida Water Management District. They partnered with AECOM to install a algal harvester on the lake or on the shores of the lake. The idea is that they are able to remove the algal mats or algal material from the water column without rupturing the cells of the algae. This is important because we learned early on in this that when you rupture the cells, if they are producing toxins, you release all the toxins. We originally thought that mechanical harvesting was the way to go and the best solution. We learned really quickly that it may be, but you have to be careful how you do it. So AECOM has created this system. We've got it here. They also have a mobile or water-based platform that we've done in Lake Jessup, which is within the St. Johns River Water Management District. Waiting on those final reports, but preliminary data shows that these systems are highly effective at removing the algal blooms, removing the nutrients associated with the algal blooms, and preventing that toxin release. Next slide, please. So during the 2019, 2020 up to 2022, we received more than $20 million for innovative technology grant program. Of that, we were able to fund 17 different projects throughout the state. You can see in the map here, they're located mostly in South Florida. That's kind of where a lot of the hot spots are throughout the state, but we tried to get it around the state so we could address different problems because we recognize that not all algal blooms are created equal. And so we wanted to make sure that our technologies can work in different areas based off different conditions. We do have currently about 15 that are in development, meaning they're going through the grant development process and should be starting this summer to start that evaluation process. Again, they're scattered throughout the state, and most of those, the 15, are highly focused on nutrient removal. Some of the projects included match. We've got about $5.5 million in match dollars that have gone towards our innovative technologies program. So we like those projects. That does take our state dollars and stretches them. It's a lot more data for us, a lot more information, but a match is not required. So it's not even a high point mark for consideration. We do look at it, and if we had two projects that were of exact and equal nature, but one had match, it would probably get a nod over the one that didn't have match. The good news for the upcoming fiscal year, which begins July 1, is we received $15 million. That's a bump from previous years where we received $10 million each year. They've also allowed us to expand our funding to go into estuaries. So previously, we were very focused on algal blooms within freshwater systems only. So it was lakes, rivers, canals, but we had to avoid those estuary systems. We were allowed to expand it this year through the legislature, providing, the governor signed the budget. And that's good news because we received a lot of projects recently in the last year that had an estuary component, and we had to kind of shift them to other funding opportunities within DEP. Also, the legislature's provided $5 million in red tide response work. That's really good news for us because the money for innovative technology has language that says we can also use it to respond to red tides. That's great. We are able to help with the local governments, the counties, when there is a red tide issue. It's bad for innovative technologies because those dollars can't be spent twice. So if they go towards red tide, that means we don't get to, it reduces the number of technologies that we can evaluate. So it was very appreciative of the legislature for providing that additional $5 million that we're very hopeful will make it through the budget this year. Next slide, please. So currently, we do have like I said, we focus on nutrient reduction. And so we have 7 of our 17 projects that are solely dedicated to nutrient reductions, specifically focused on nitrogen and phosphorus. Pictured here on the right, this is our agreement with Lee County. It is located on the BOMA property that is owned by South Florida Water Management District. And it is focused on, if you will, kind of supercharging the stormwater treatment areas. We know that natural systems are quite effective at removing phosphorus, but they're not so good at removing nitrogen. And so Lee County has this project that they're working on to see if there's a way to change how these natural systems work or modify how they work, improve their functioning to get to that nitrogen removal that is so important for our lakes and rivers and streams. Phosphorus, again, it's a huge problem throughout the state, but it's not the only problem. And again, these technologies, we're focusing on those that can prevent the nutrients from getting into the water because it's much cheaper, it's easier. It's prevention is always the easier way to go. But if we can get those technologies that can reduce those that are already in the water, that's a win for us also. Next slide, please. So where to apply? We have gone solely to a web portal format. Our web portal is located at our task force website, the protectingfloridatogether.com or .gov, excuse me. This is what the portal looks like. It's under our state action tab. There's a section that says grants. When you click on that tab, you will get to this section. Right now, our portal is not live. It will be live probably this month, maybe next month. We're waiting on a couple of tweaks to our portal to make sure that it's answering all the questions and functioning just as we want it to function. So we've got some work to finish on it. We thought we were ready, but we found some hiccups when we went through some initial testing. But you can also, at this web portal, you can see not only the innovative technology grants, but you can find springs grants, wastewater grants. Above this, I cut it off when I did a screen grab, but this is our resiliency grant program, which is live right now. That's going to be our coastal resiliency program that received significant funding this year for projects that are addressing climate change, sea level rise, and the like. Next slide, please. This is just a quick screen grab of what the application looks like. You can see it's just some fill-in tabs. There's a lot more to it. You can see that there's multiple pages of the submissions. We do ask that it has to be completed in full before it will be considered. In fact, the portal will not let you go to the next page unless you have completed every single required field on that page. Some of the improvements we've had to the portal from last year to this year, we do allow the attachment of documents this year. So if a vendor has case studies or data that they want to provide in advance of review, we're able to accept that information this year to help us in our evaluation process. Next slide, please. So that's us in a nutshell. Like I said, we have about 15 million coming our way. We'll be opening that portal within the next, I would say, next 35 days, hopefully soon. Our plan is to have the portal open for about 30 to 60 days, and we will begin the evaluation process shortly after it closes. And again, our focus, we're looking at projects that can prevent or reduce nutrients in water, or those that predict nutrient or algal bloom formations, or anything that can direct our resources to addressing those issues before they become a significant problem. And if you have any questions, you can either email me directly, or you can send emails to this email address here, that inntech_hab@floridadep.gov. This is our innovative tech website or email address. It's monitored by our staff regularly. So if you send an email to it, you'll get a response within a business day, guaranteed. So, and with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
And the information on the innovative technologies, we go back a slide, and the opportunities to apply. Due to where we're at in our agenda and time limitations, I am going to ask any members to take Mr. Smith's advice to contact him directly through this website or through this email address with any questions. And again, thank you very much for joining us today. Great presentation. Appreciate the information.
Thank you.